live stream is started. Thank you very much. Welcome to this meeting of Cabinet. My name is Jonathan Lester. I'm the leader of the council and I will be chairing the meeting. In addition to those councillors present in the room, we have some other councillors joining us in our meeting remotely. I will now check that they can hear us and we can hear them. So first of all, we have Councillor Durkin, who's attending. He's a member of this cabinet, but he's attending remotely. Councillor Durkin, can I have confirmation that you can hear us and see us?
I can hear you and see you, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durkin. So Councillor Durkin can participate in this meeting, but because he's not in the room, he will not be able to vote. We also have the Chair of Children's Scrutiny, Councillor Fagan. Can you hear us and see us?
Good afternoon, Councillor Lester. I can hear and see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much and thank you for your attendance. We also have officers online as well. We have the rest of the Cabinet in attendance. We have group leaders who are also in attendance and will be asked to speak in due course. Have we any other scrutiny chairs in attendance? No? Okay. So we have a number of officers in the room or attending remotely, and if they're called to speak, they will introduce themselves for the meeting. So I'll now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information of this meeting are available for public viewing on Herefordshire Council's website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on Herefordshire Council's YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak directly into the microphone clearly and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you are not speaking. Only one microphone will be able to speak at a time and will flash green when you are waiting and flash red and go red when you are speaking. If you have an issue with your microphone, please let colleagues know who will allocate you a new microphone. Please ensure that mobile phones and all other devices are set to set to silent. And that includes all of the laptops where they ping and make noises with notifications because it's off-putting to everyone. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record the public meetings, provided it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If any member of the public attending does not wish to be filmed or photographed, please notify a member of staff. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives to indicate if they wish to speak on views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will also call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. I will permit group leaders to speak once on each item. Also, Councillor Hitchener has also made a request to me to speak on the item on the Hereford Road strategy, and so he's here, and I've agreed that he can make his comments accordingly after group leaders have been given their opportunity to comment. So as I said before, voting will be undertaken by a show of hands by those Cabinet members that are physically in the room. So go to first item on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. So can I ask the clerk, have we received any apologies?
We received apologies from Councillor Louis Stark.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies? No. Okay. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any table A, table B, or any other interests for items on the agenda today? Councillor Powell?
Excuse me. Thank you, Leader. I have to register an interest in the discussion item at number 11 and will leave the room for the duration of that discussion.
Did you want to clarify the reason?
My apologies. Yeah, a registered interest in my role currently as the chairman, voluntary role, chairman of Hereford Rugby Football Club.
Thank you. Councillor Hercombe?
Yeah, it's not an interest I have to declare, but I am employed by National Highways, and they're referenced in the report on item 11. So I'm just letting the meeting know for transparency.
Thank you very much. Any other? Oh, Councillor Hitchener.
Yeah, Leader, I was going to declare an interest when I made my comments on item 11, but I can do it now or later, whichever.
Do it now, please.
Okay, so my residence is approximately 700 metres from the proposed western roundabout, and I have been given a dispensation to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we move on to agenda item 3, which is minutes of the previous meeting on the 29th of February. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Cabinet members, are you content that the minutes of the 29th of February are an accurate record and should be signed? Yep, thank you. So we now move on to questions. And so agenda item 4 is to receive any questions from members of the public. Members of the public have the opportunity to submit questions to Cabinet in writing ahead of the meeting. We have received 12 questions for this meeting, and the response has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those who have submitted a question have been given the opportunity to submit a written supplementary question or attend the meeting to ask their question live. Supplementary questions are to be no more than 1 minute in length and must include a question. I may exercise some discretion if the questioner is going over that time, but I will now ask for the clerk to confirm how many supplementary questions have been received.
We've received 7 supplementary questions.
Right. Okay, so first question is, can we just clarify who the first question is for the supplementary, please?
Yes, it's from Mr. Maury Waker.
Morietska?
Yes,
Yep.
so excuse my pronunciation.
Yep.
Brenton.
Yep. Okay, so can we see that supplementary? Oh, it's there.
Would you like it read out?
Yes, please.
Yes. Hereford has not always had low bus use, as in 2001, 2002, over 2.5 million journeys were by bus. However, when the frequency of commercial services was cut by 50% by 2005-2006, 1 million passenger journeys were lost. I'm therefore heartened that the Council is looking to invest in improving bus services. In October 2023, Councillor Price said that reopening Pontrylas Station was a priority and that this was reinforced by the leader's report of the same time. However, I am unable to find any business case for this scheme on the Council website. So would he please provide the cost of the scheme and the impact of the Pontrylas Station reopening would have on reducing car use into Hereford?
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morigetti, for your supplementary. In answer, a strategic outline business case was submitted to the Department for Transport in December 2020 and was not successful. However, Cabinet later in this meeting has been asked to allocate funding of £50,000 to review the strategic outline business case so as to progress this project further. It is only when developing the full business case that we will be able to consider the wider impacts on car use. Capital costs estimated at mid-2020 prices were £12.4 million and operating costs of £0.13 million per year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Price, can we have the next question, supplementary question, please?
This one's from Mr. P. McKay of Leominster. Thank you for taking my suggestion on board. And I ask that you draw the team's attention to the fact that sections of the highways and public rights of way map can be printed, but sections of the parks, play areas and sports pitches map and properties map cannot be printed, and ask that development of this enables map sections to be printed, facilitating constructive discussion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. McKay. I think we've had quite a bit of correspondence over the years on this subject. We strive to make Council information as accessible as possible and will investigate the practicalities of enabling personal printing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next supplementary question.
From Mr. Banks of Hereford. Thank you for highlighting the Council's efforts to develop internal resources and expertise while acknowledging the necessity of external consultants for the Hereford Western Bypass project. Given the importance of fiscal responsibility, could you elaborate on the measures in place to ensure that consultant costs remain within reasonable bands and that value for money is achieved? Additionally, how does the Council plan to assess the effectiveness of these cost control measures and ensure transparency in consultant expenditures throughout the project's life cycle?
Councillor Price.
Again, thank you for the supplementary question. The Council follows its financial guidelines and a set of contract procedure rules that ensure value for money is achieved in all contracts and that all expenditure on consultants is both transparent and managed effectively. I will furnish you with the links and they will be found on the minutes of this meeting when they are published. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Next question, please.
The next question is from Mr. J. Milne of Hereford. I understand he wishes to ask this question himself.
Prioritising the building of motor roads worsens traffic congestion and emissions, largely through induced demand, an effect long understood by transport planners. I am pleased to hear the Cabinet member accepts that. In a meeting last week, on the 19th of March, he was reminded of his promise complementary active travel measures and public realm improvements, described as a boulevard, would be delivered for the commercial road Blue School Street corridor, conditional on the City Link Road. They were designed 10 years ago, but not delivered due to overspend on the City Link Road. Now they have been redesigned, but without the same level of ambition for modal shift to sustainable travel, in view of the lack of challenge to the induced increase in car traffic since the CLR was opened, an entirely predictable result. What has the Cabinet member learned from this experience which should be applied to his new roads strategy?
Thank you very much for the question. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Mr. Milne, for your question and supplementary. This is really up to date and ongoing, and I will make sure you receive a written answer in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Next question, please.
From Mr. C. Banks, Hereford. Thank you for your reply. However, as Herefordshire Council only permit the public 1 minute and 140 words to pose a question, I did a little research in neighbouring counties. Worcestershire allows 3 minutes per question and no word limit. Powys have no limit to words or time except for 1 minute time limit for the supplemental question. Shropshire permit up to 250 words per question. Gloucestershire allocates 30 minutes for public questions without any limits on words or time per question. I clearly recall the chairman of the council saying at the meeting on 8th of December last year that they would have to review the constitution regarding public questions in discussion with group leaders. Isn't it about time that you did review this issue, as your current policy does not compare favourably with others?
Thank you very much for the question, Mrs. Banks. That's for me to answer. And thank Mrs. Banks for the comparisons that she's set out with other authorities. And it's my understanding that the Constitution will be reviewed, which will include reference to questions to members of the public, and we will bear this in mind when we come to that review. Thank you.
Next question from Miss Mareka Brenton. Excuse my pronunciation again. Road modelling shows the average journey time saving on the longer routes through Hereford is 1.5 minutes and just 0.5 minutes on the shorter journeys, neither of which would be thought to be significant by most Herefordians, especially at a cost of 0.23 billion for a road, ahead of any other interventions. To reduce carbon emissions across Herefordshire, the council would get a much better return on investment by tackling the 50% of emissions arising from journeys between 10 to 50 miles, Why then is the council not considering the needs of the whole county, investing in an integrated network of public transport connected to a safe, active travel across Herefordshire, improving access and opportunity for everyone and sharing the benefits of such a high level of transport investment whilst meeting their local transport plan objectives?
Thank you for the question. Councillor Price, please.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Morawiecka, for your supplementary. There's a lot in this what you've asked for. So, in response, the next stage of the LTP development is develop a long list of options to assess them against their ability to deliver the objectives, and then produce a short list of the best performing options. This assessment process will determine the extent to which public transport, active travel and other measures contribute to the objectives, including providing viable low-emission options for most journeys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question, please.
From Mr. Moffat, Hereford. The Western Bypass is justified by building thousands of houses in the catchment of flood zones upstream of the city. Who will be liable for the much higher environmental impact costs from flooding, developing the road and lands west of the city, higher in the catchment of the city flood zone?
Thank you. Councillor Price, again.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moffat, for your supplementary question. The development of the Hereford Western Bypass and the development of any future housing sites will require planning permission and approval of the Environment Agency to take account of flood risk, and will need to include measures to mitigate those risks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question, please, is from Mr. Pugh, I believe. Mr. Pugh is in the room. Would you like to come and ask your question? Thank you.
My question. While the explanation went at length about what was outside the council's ability to alter, little was said about where it had power and influence. The council currently have propositions including building beside the River Wye. One proposed development, were it to be approved, stands on the floodplain of the Wye and squarely next to a site of special scientific interest, proposing permission for the building of 350 houses with little or no protective infrastructure for either locals or the river. Given the council's rhetoric over protection of the river, can it be assured after such rhetoric that Herefordshire Council will not entertain development in this or similar situations in future under their planning control, refusing both adoption or approval?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Pugh. Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your question, Mr. Pugh, and thank you for attending in person. Planning is a quasi-judicial process, so therefore there's a process of application and planning officer judgment, inputs, environmental constraints will be identified, and if they can't be mitigated, then that will be a material consideration. So this is not for the cabinet to make a decision here and now. It's a planning application, so therefore it has to go through the process of all planning applications, and therefore I can't say here and now what the outcome of that would be, because it would be prejudicial to the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Swinglehurst. Any more public questions?
No further questions.
Okay, well, just remains for me. Oh, sorry, there's another.
He wants to ask on behalf of somebody else.
Okay, Mr. Pugh is going to ask a question on behalf of Mr. McGowan. Hello again. Maybe if you just don't hold the microphone so close, but make sure the red light is on.
Okay, thank you. Question comes from Mr. McGowan. Supplementary public question for Councillor Price. The new Herefordshire Transport Plan objectives support active travel and the use of public transport. The Dilwyn DW20 footbridge farce illustrates Council's inability to support active travel to Webley. How about public transport? The last bus for Webley departs Hereford intended integrated transport hub at 18:15. 1 minute later, the train from Birmingham, QE Hospital and Worcester arrives at 18:16. So, if travel back to Webley is required, you'd better finish your Birmingham business or hospital appointments early. You couldn't make this up. Can the council use the influence with this county bus operator to have departures 5 minutes after the train arrives, therefore creating an extra productive hour? It's the simplest of transport hub if the simplest integrations of transport hub are not possible, then the reasonable conclusion would be that the plan has fine words on many pages, but no deliverable substance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for asking that supplementary on Mr. McGowan's behalf. Councillor Price?
Yes, thank you for the question. I will actually ensure that officers take this up with the operators, because this is an operational issue. I find it absolutely incomprehensible that the last bus leaves a minute before the train arrives. So we will take on board your point and get officers to ensure that they have the discussions with the trains and the bus people concerned, and when the transport hub comes online, that we do make sure that we don't have mishaps in timetables in this manner. So thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. It's all in the timing. Okay, thank you. So thank you to members of the public for their questions and the supplementary questions, and for members of the public's attendance, which is much appreciated. So we now move on to agenda item 5, which is questions from councillors. We've received 2 questions from councillors, but no request for supplementary questions to be asked. So those questions and the answers to those questions will be published in the council minutes accordingly. So we now move on to agenda item 6, which is reports from scrutiny committees. And we're very lucky to have all 3 scrutiny chairs in attendance at the meeting regarding the scrutiny committee's recommendations that will be put forward to the executive. So I will ask scrutiny chairs to comment. So the first one is we have received a report from the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee regarding corporate parenting services and the Corporate Parenting Board. So Councillor Fagan, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. So this recommendation comes out of the discussion that was had around corporate parenting, and particularly the Corporate Parenting Board. And it was felt that the workings of the board weren't very accessible to either councillors or members of the public. And if you look at the website around the Corporate Parenting Board, it sort of basically says what's in the box, but it doesn't, what should be in the box, but it doesn't actually give you any more information. And I think that it would probably be a good idea for there to be at least a quarterly report or something like that, an update which members of the public and councillors can refer to, which explains the progress of the Corporate Parenting Board, the ongoing responsibilities, the issues that have been raised, things like attendance, who's actually been attending the board, who hasn't been attending the board. So it just makes the Corporate Parenting Board sort of more accountable to the public and to councillors. And so that's the crux of it, looking at how the board's workings can, and the information around that can be more accessible. Obviously, with discussion, there will be sort of various views on how that can be done. But at the moment, it's quite out of date, the information on the website, and doesn't really tell much about any progress or initiative that's happening with regards to the Corporate Parenting Board. And then the second recommendation was again just drawing on the existing work that's happening when young people in our care or care leavers actually are celebrating some sort of achievement. How can we build on how we actually help them to you know, become really proud of what they've done? So extending opportunities to write letters and cards celebrating the achievements of the young people. I think at the last scrutiny meeting, the Director of Children's Services was saying that it is, he does that. It's part of his responsibility. The former director, may I say, but we just felt that potentially as a council we could build on that, so that we are actually genuinely sharing the achievements of the young people. So that's the how these recommendations have come to your desk. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fagan, and we will be giving an executive response after we've had a chance to go through those recommendations. But thank you very much for shining a light on the Corporate Parenting Board and the corporate parenting responsibility. It's very, very important. Thank you very much. The next set of recommendations was from the Connected Communities Scrutiny Committee regarding the policy prioritisation and delivery of the Section 106 funding. That's page 29 on the agenda, and Councillor Jones is in the room, so I'd like to just hand over to Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, the Connected Community Scrutiny Committee scrutinised the question of Section 106 contributions. Our meeting looked specifically at kind of two aspects of that. Number one, the strategic focus of that, the process by which it's decided what sorts of projects go forward for consideration for Section 106 funding, how that process of consultation with parishes works and so forth. And number two, we looked at the question of the implementation of spending Section 106 contributions. Our recommendations are set out here. I won't go through them all, but I would like to draw colleagues' attention to a couple of matters. Recommendation 1, it became clear during the course of our questioning that Section 106 contributions have, the amounts were set in a policy document in 2008. That policy document did not specify that those amounts should increase in line with inflation or house prices or any relevant metric, with the result that they have fallen behind for 16 years. And our committee felt it was extremely important that those charges to developers are updated, because during those 16 years, the price of houses has gone up by 50%, but the contributions that they've been asked to pay has gone up by 0%. So I think this is an example of scrutiny shining a very useful light on something that I think we can all agree needs to be rectified ASAP. Another theme that we explored in quite a lot of depth was the question of involvement of parishes and local residents in setting priorities for Section 106, actually understanding what is happening with these amounts. And we've got some recommendations that address that around improving parish council, councillor and resident engagement in the what's called the community wish list, the sets of projects that communities have identified are locally needed and could potentially be funded through Section 106, and indeed publishing the data in a more accessible format. We've had definite improvements in the last couple of years, and I'd like to pay tribute to my colleague next to me for driving forward improvements on Section 106, Councillor Harvey in her previous role. We've had improvements in transparency, for example, of the amounts that are available within each parish. What we don't have yet is the clarity around what parishes are asking for and what prospect they have got of getting those things funded through Section 106. So I hope these recommendations are helpful to colleagues, officers and Cabinet Member, and I look forward to, and the rest of the committee do, to receiving a written response as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones, for explaining, yet again, shining a light on a really important function of the Council. And lastly, the Scrutiny Management Board met regarding Hoople Limited. And this, the recommendations are on page 37 of the agenda. And Councillor Harvey, as chairperson, I hand the floor to you to comment on that meeting.
Yes, thank you, Leader. The committee had a good go at finding out more about Hoople, what it's all about, how it's come about, how it works with the council to deliver services, and how it operates and is overseen. The majority of the recommendations are really recommendations to the shareholder committee of this council, which has been set up to oversee the council's holding in organisations like Hoople, and it's disappointing that the committee is yet to meet. However, I hope that the administration will consider the recommendations that have been made. The fourth recommendation was around gender pay gap and making information more available about gender pay gap and progress being made to narrow that within Hoople as an organisation that's almost entirely owned by the council. I look forward to receiving the responses to these recommendations from the administration in due course.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harvey, and I thought it was a very good meeting, and I think members learnt quite a lot about that, so it was a very excellent exercise in focusing on Hoople. Okay, thank you for those recommendations. So the recommendations put before us. So the recommendation for the Cabinet is, our Cabinet members, are you content to note the recommendations for a response to be made in due course? Yep, everyone in agreement? Excellent, thank you very much. So we now move on to agenda item 7, which is Herefordshire and Worcestershire All-Age Autism Strategy 2024 to 2029. So we have to approve the strategy. The item begins on page 43 of the agenda pack. And I would now look to the Cabinet Member for Adults and Wellbeing, Councillor Gandhi, to talk us through this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present the report for the Hereford and Worcester ICS All-Age Autism Strategy 24-29 for Cabinet approval. The Autism Act of 2009 is the only disability-specific legislation in England, providing statutory guidance for NHS and local authorities to implement a local strategy to improve staff training, identification and diagnosis, transition children to adult services, employment and criminal justice. In September 2022, work started on an all-age strategy in line with the National Autism Strategy for the Integrated Care System, which I'll refer to as the ICS in future, in Herefordshire and Worcestershire. A co-production approach across 2 counties involved autistic people, carers and professionals, workshops and online surveys with over 400 responses. The work was overseen by the Autism Partnership Boards of Herefordshire and Worcestershire. The priorities aligned with the national strategy was within 7 themes. 1 was understanding and the acceptance within society. Secondly, children and young people have access and transition into adulthood. Thirdly, support into employment. Fourthly, tackling health and care inequalities. And fifthly, building the right support in the community. Sixthly, supporting in the criminal justice system. And finally, keeping safe. Progress will be monitored at the ICS Developing Services for Autistic People Board, with oversight from the ICS Learning Disability and Autism Programme Assurance Board. And annual reports will be presented to the Health and Wellbeing Boards in both counties. The Autism Strategy aims to deliver positive outcomes and improve lives in a number of different areas across local communities. The strategy provides the platform to elevate the profile of autism and aims to facilitate significant and meaningful change. It should enable more support for autistic people, remove barriers and discrimination with empathy and increased knowledge. The key themes of the health and wellbeing strategy align closely with the priorities set out within the autism strategy. This includes enabling the best start in life for children and good mental well-being throughout life. The strategy has been developed to support compliance with the legislative framework, and I ask the Cabinet to approve this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gandhi. Very important strategy. Councillors, Cabinet members, any comments? Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you. Looking at this strategy and the work underpinning it, I was just going to say I was so struck by the personalised nature of the knowledge. It was really drawing on real life experience. And I'm just going to pick up one of the quotes because it absolutely struck me. The world has 8 billion unique individuals. Difference should be embraced and celebrated. It took me 50 years to find that I'm on the autism spectrum. I told my manager, and she has been very supportive of me. For the first time in my 30 years of work, I wasn't ridiculed or belittled, but supported, and that means a lot to me. This sort of focus on lived experience, I think, has enriched this strategy immeasurably. I'm very much in support of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other Cabinet members' comments? I know you're all keen to support. If not, I'll go straight to group leaders. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah,
first.
just to say I support fully the recommendations in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chowns.
Thank you. Yes, I also very much welcome this strategy. Like Councillor Swinglehurst, I really like the way that it used the voices of individuals to kind of bring things to life. I also particularly liked the fact that it gave references for academic studies that were cited or sources of statistics, which is a personal bugbear. So I'd love to see that in all of the documents that come to us. I did just think, though, I've got a slight suggestion for improvement. All of the high-level aims and the key actions are just bullet points, so they'll be extremely hard to follow up on, to monitor progress on. I think that kind of clarifying them, numbering them, and having some sort of clarity about how is progress towards achieving this strategy would be really helpful in making sure that it does actually go on to achieve what it, it's multiple but very admirable aims.
Thank you. Any other group? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Leader. Independents for Herefordshire similarly welcome this the publication of this strategy. It's heartening to have greater recognition of the neurodivergent nature of people's lived experience and the way in which people work. And I think anything that helps to broaden that and the understanding of that in the workplace and in society more generally is very much to be welcomed. Building on Councillor Chowns' point about how will this be taken forward, could I make a plea, please, that since this is a strategy, that it is followed up with an implementation plan so that we actually look at how we're going to deliver this in all the various different ways in which I'm sure we shall.
Thank you. And Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I endorse everything that's been said by the other group leaders. I must say, this is one area where it's a massive issue, but it's one where enormous progress in actually understanding what this is. I sometimes think we're all autistic. It's just where we are on the scale of autism, and what was considered to be eccentricity in the past. Now, sometimes we now understand it a little better, and I think we're a little more understanding of some of the more serious problems that it can cause individuals. Thank you. But wholeheartedly think it's a very readable and, how should I say,
accessible,
unbureaucratic report, and I think that's the most important thing.
Were it the case that all strategies were not so bureaucratic, maybe that's something we should aspire to. Okay, well, thank you, group leaders, for your comments. So, Councillor Gandhi. Yeah, Councillor Gandhi, there's a put down here, the requirement of a delivery plan. I was wondering what your views would be on that, and also getting away from bullet points rather than numbered items. So over to you, Councillor Gandhi.
I don't mind bullet points or numbers, and if members would prefer numbers and bullet points, that's absolutely fine. With regards to the greater detail, we will be developing a detailed delivery plan that's already sort of in the pipeline. So yes, that is important to what we're doing, and I'm really grateful to both the Cabinet and members of the group leaders for their support of this plan. I just think that, as Councillor James has said, autism and people on the autistic spectrum got a greater understanding now, but I still think there are areas where people struggle to understand people who are on the autistic spectrum, and the more that we can do to give them that knowledge, the greater the opportunities will be for people on the autistic spectrum to gain employment and do well in school, which is what is so important.
Thank you, Councillor Gandhi. And with the delivery plan, can we make that equally as unbureaucratic? That would be a great thing to aspire to. Yes, okay. Councillor Swinglehurst, you wanted to make a point?
Yeah, again, sort of touching on the delivery and the sort of nuts and bolts of how does a plan like this help people? I know there's a certain amount of concern over waiting times between diagnosis and accessing services. So how will this strategy help that?
I think the strategy itself gives some pointers to what we're trying to do to reduce the waiting times and to deal with people, to recognise that some people that have received a diagnosis of being on the autistic spectrum, but this particular strategy actually includes those people who have not actually received that diagnosis. You're right. The autism assessments are undertaken by NHS Herefordshire Worcestershire Health and Care Trust, and we know that waiting times are far too long, and action to address this is in fact reflected in the aims of the strategy. Data is collected by the Trust, but it doesn't differentiate between Herefordshire and Worcestershire patients. So I can't actually give you the information with regards to Herefordshire patients. Whilst we do know that at the end of November 2023, the average waiting time for an autism assessment by community paediatricians is 19 weeks, and for an autism assessment by CAMS is 103 weeks. And I think we would all agree that that is unacceptable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments, everyone. So the task now is to approve the recommendations 1 and 2, which is to approve the autism strategy and to delegate authority to the relevant officers to carry out the operational decisions that fall within the responsibility of Herefordshire Council. All in agreement, show please. Thank you very much. Great to have that strategy with us. Okay, now item 8 is the Wye Valley Trust Investment Partnership Model. This item is to agree an increase in the value offered as to the investment to Wye Valley Trust to enable the development of an education centre at Hereford County Hospital, to further explore options around the strategic investment partnership and to bring a business case back to Cabinet for approval by autumn 2024. This item begins on page 125 of the agenda pack, and I would now like to invite Councillor Biggs to talk us through the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to share this update on the progress of the work to develop the Education Centre at the County Hospital in Hereford. Since our meeting in July, officers from both the Council and Wye Valley Trust have been working hard to progress to the full business case. They're on target to deliver the full business case in the autumn. The project is an enabler for economic growth, providing an exemplar state-of-art teaching facility. The Education Centre will play a critical part in upskilling staff, which will support the Wye Valley Trust and the Council's aspiration to recruit and retrain skilled staff. We have greater clarity now around the build cost, and this is reflected in the paper. As part of the Cabinet's commitment to openness and transparency, I'm sharing these with Cabinet today. In addition, Wye Valley Trust are engaged with NHS England, seeking approval to increase the Trust's CDEL limit. This is a mechanism that the NHS uses to approve such schemes as the Education Centre. At the recent political group consultation, the question of partnership and how Herefordshire Council will work with the Wye Valley Trust once the Education Centre is operational has been raised. This will be discussed as part of the development ahead of the full business case coming back in autumn. I'm also aware that questions previously been raised regarding the efficiency of the building. While it's not an asset of Herefordshire Council, as stated in the papers, we will be actively seeking to work with the Trust to minimise any adverse environmental impact. I'd like to ask the Cabinet to accept this update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Biggs. Councillors on Cabinet, any questions? Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to use the highly technical term that we discussed last July, that this is a win-win and a no-brainer, because this is very much along the lines of what we, as this administration, are doing. We want to grow the economy, we want to create high qualified workforce, and this is very much in place with this. It is going to be revenue neutral to us, and therefore I fully and strongly support Councillor Briggs' recommendations.
Thank you very much. Any other Cabinet members wish to comment? If not, then I'll go quickly to group leaders. Councillor Chowns first.
Thank you. I fully support the sentiments expressed by my colleagues regarding the importance of supporting investment in skills development in the health service. Absolutely on board with that. I do have some questions, though, about this proposal and this report. I sent a question to the officers involved on the 18th of March in response to the request for councillor consultation, and I haven't unfortunately had a response yet, and I want to raise it here because my question was that in July 2023, so only 8 months ago, the Cabinet report on this proposal said that the cost of the overall project is in the region of 10.5 million, and there's a funding gap of approximately 6 million. So at that point, us as a council was being asked to loan £6 million to the project. So just 8 months later, the costs of the project, the estimated costs of the project have increased 60% in 8 months. And the loan requested from Herefordshire Council has more than doubled to £15 million. And the Wye Valley Trust financing component appears to have nearly halved from 4.5 million down to 2.5 million. So I asked why this is. This isn't mentioned in the report. This isn't clarified in the report. Councillor Biggs, you talked about bringing this report as an exercise in transparency. There is absolutely no information about this. Paragraph 5 just says, you know, the costs have gone up, but there's no information about why. Doesn't clearly articulate the fact that the request to Herefordshire Council has increased to 2.5 times the request 8 months ago, while the Wye Valley Trust contribution has gone down. And you know, frankly, if the costs have escalated so fast in the last 8 months, what possible confidence can we have that by the time the full business case comes back to us in September, they won't have, you know, nearly doubled again? So I'm really concerned about this, and that there isn't more information in this paper. I would have thought that Cabinet would be demanding more information about this. It's a great project in principle, but I do think we need clarity, and I don't think we can claim that this report is an exercise in transparency if it doesn't actually carry those numbers. Incidentally, my question isn't reflected in paragraph 26 about consultation, but that could be an oversight. I've also got a couple of other questions. You know, the phrasing of the recommendation is very unclear. So it says, you know, this recommendation is to note progress towards the business case and, you know, the increase to 15 million. Is Cabinet today being asked to approve an increase in the funding envelope to 15 million, in which case my argument would strongly be that I think you need more information before you can approve that? Or is it just you're being asked to note that there's a bit of an update and it looks more expensive than it previously was? So I wonder why it's come to Cabinet if there's not that clarity about what's in it. And two further questions. What is the repayment term? I can't see that clarified in this document. Apologies if I missed it. And CDEL, you know, I don't want to get terribly technical, Councillor Biggs, but, you know, you brought this up yourself, you mentioned it. My understanding originally was that the request for council financing to contribute towards this was because of the restrictions on what Wye Valley themselves can raise, for example, through the Public Works Loan Board, because of the CDEL restrictions. But in this report, and your explanation, it sounds like what we loan them will be included in CDEL, in which case, why are they coming to us? Why not cut out the middle person and Wye Valley just fund it themselves by borrowing from Public Works Loan Board or whatever other sources make sense? I don't understand why there's a middle person in here or a middle council, as it were. So I'd love to get some clarification on those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chowns. Any other group leaders? Councillor Matthews.
I agree with Councillor Chowns. There's obviously some issues that have to be clarified. But what I'd like to ask Councillor Biggs, if he'd be so kind, because I haven't heard of this sort of thing anywhere else. Has this been operating elsewhere in the country, and if so, has it been a success?
Have you got any other comments, Councillor Matthews?
That's it, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Matthews, can you just turn your mic off, please? Thank you very much.
That's it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's such contrast to the last report. I mean, it would take you some time to work out what this was about if you just, a member of the public, looked at this. This wonderful line at the head of it, at the beginning, where it's in the agenda, to agree an increase in the value offered as an investment in the Wye Valley Trust to enable the development. Why don't you say we need more money to be, you know, it needs more money, the project, you know, I mean, talk about bureaucracy and hiding things, you know, we were all enthusiastic about this 8 months ago, wherever it was when it came to the council, and I just think if you read the report, you know, you eventually get as to what they're actually saying, but you know that line is a wonderful line to agree the increase in the value offered as a, what has increased the value of the investment? You know, as there extra students, or what's going to happen that makes it an increased investment?
Thank you very much for those comments. So, Cabinet. Councillor James, can I ask you to turn your microphone off, please? It's all right, okay. If we just all get into the habit, I know it's easy to forget, but I think it stops the next person. So, Cabinet, we're about to make a decision to note the recommendation, but Councillor Biggs, you've heard the concerns that have been raised by group leaders.
Yeah, I think without going into too much detail on that, lead, I mean, the Wye Valley Trust, they've assessed the project and they're reporting a cost of 17.5 million. It's still pending a full business case. That's going to come back to us in autumn. In terms of that, there are a number of questions that we need to go through, and that needs to be worked through as part of that business case and that full clarity. So we're not looking to approve that loan today. We're looking at an update of substantially that there would seem to be an increase in the costs, and that's going to come back to us as part of that full business case.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Price.
Yeah, I absolutely share the views of the group leaders. You know, it's great that we are asked to support a project that is going to potentially bring a lot of further education to and higher skill set into Herefordshire. We're sort of not sure what it's going to finish up costing. However, the cost, it's the bureaucratic nature of where they have to acquire the money. I mean, I think I said when we discussed this last year, is how come the NHS can't afford to put their systems in place to acquire money? I don't know what the bureaucracy around that is and that we're asked. However, if it is satisfied when we do get asked for the money, that it is met by the NHS and government funding, then there's no risk to us. Whatever that is, it will be subject to that full business case. But I am disappointed that it goes up and up and up without the explanation as to why it's gone up. Maybe the whole concept has changed, I don't know. But on the basis that we need to improve our skill set here in Herefordshire, I absolutely support the basis of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Leader. Just picking up on Councillor Matthews' point about has this been done before in the country, and I can say that Whiteshaven Council funded a health centre with the NHS in Pershore. So it has been done previously.
Sorry, is someone indicating that they want to come back? There's a couple of hands going up and down. Councillor James?
Yeah, I mean, this all goes back to the days of the PFI and Mr. Lawson, who, in order to get into attempt to get into the single currency, do you ever remember that? Oh, yes, we set rules for health services whereby they couldn't go out and borrow money, and that's why we ended up with all these very expensive PFIs, which are costing us a fortune now. But the rule still exists about unlike councils, the health services or health trusts are restricted in where they can borrow money from.
Thank you, Councillor James. I don't remember. Far too young. Anyway, right, okay. So the recommendation is to note the progress. And we note that the cost has gone up, the outline cost. But we're noting the progress at this stage. And I welcome all of the comments about the benefits that a health training centre would bring to the health service and to Herefordshire as a whole. I propose, Councillor Biggs, you're going to propose that we note the progress? Yeah. Seconder, please. Yeah. Councillor Stoddart, all in favour? Thank you very much. So we now move on to the fourth Ofsted monitoring visit feedback, which is agenda item 9. So this is to share the feedback letter from Ofsted following their fourth monitoring visit conducted on the 21st and 22nd of February this year. The report for this item is in the third supplementary pack. I would just like to note that the Director for Children's Services has left the council. So I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Freeman for all of his hard work and dedication during what has been an extremely challenging time over the past 2 years. So I would like to now go to the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Councillor Powell, to talk about this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. As the Leader has said, the inspectors visited Herefordshire Children's Services for the fourth monitoring visit on the 21st and 22nd of February this year, and the focus was on older young people in care aged 16 and 17 and care leavers aged 18 to 25. Overall, the inspectors acknowledged that whilst improvements continue to be made, the pace of change needs to be improved, and overall the quality of practice needs to be more consistent. And this we have heard consistently across all 4 monitoring visits. The inspection report was published yesterday, and during the day we delivered to all members briefings, 90 minutes each, one in the morning, one in the later in the afternoon into the early evening, where a significant amount of the detail was presented. During those presentations, we received a number of questions and observations from members who attended, and of course we're reflecting on those, and they were very welcome. Given those 2 all-member briefings and the detail that was shared, I only intend to outline the headline findings of the inspection, which are: plans to improve children's services have not led to sufficient positive impact for care leavers and 16 and 17-year-olds who are in our care in Herefordshire. planned changes to services have either not been implemented or have only been put in place very recently. The quality of practice for care leavers remains inconsistent, and children in care experience too many changes of social worker, which hinders progress in meeting their needs. Some older children in care and care leavers with more complex needs are not sufficiently prioritised, both by children's services and by key agencies. During the presentations and discussions yesterday, we talked about the contribution of our partners, our formal partners, and Councillor Gandhi, some of Councillor Gandhi's statistics and data that she reported in the item on the all-age autism strategy are indications of where we need to be working with those partners and indeed challenging them to improve the timeliness of some of those service deliveries. The Inspector acknowledged that senior leaders have ensured that significant additional funding has been put into the service and agreed for the next few years, but this has not yet resulted in improvement. The Inspectorate do give verbal feedback at the time of the inspection and prior to them providing the formal report. So obviously the report has been considered in detail, but the service has already been responding to that very early feedback over the last 4 weeks or so. And that, of course, is to help improve support for care experienced children and young people in Herefordshire. So in conclusion, the current improvement plan, which responded to the findings of the inspection of local authority children's services in July 2022, has been reviewed, and a draft refresh of that plan for the year 24-25 was presented and considered by the Improvement Board and its members on the 20th of March 2024. And it is the intention to present the refreshed improvement plan at the Cabinet meeting on the 25th of April this year. And my recommendation to Cabinet is that we receive and note the feedback from the Ofsted Inspector's Monitoring Visit Letter, which has been circulated but is also attached to Appendix A. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell, and I would just like to thank all councillors who were able to attend the feedback sessions yesterday, both in the morning and in the evening. Those two sessions had some really valuable feedback from members. Cabinet members, any comments or questions? No, if not, we'll go to group leaders. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know that there's much that can be said at this particular stage other than here we go again, Groundhog Day. You know, it's very sad what has happened, and you know, it isn't just a problem that it is in Herefordshire, it's in other areas of the country as well, other authorities within the country. There are some positive signs of some improvement and engagement with families, but as the Ofsted said, it isn't, you know, the pace is very, very slow. I mean, this goes back 12 years from when the problems were first identified. And here we are still, you know, we're one step forward, one step back. As I say, it's very, very sad. It's no good gloating, as some people do, over the fact that we've lost a director. I had great criticisms of the style of previous directors and the current one. But, you know, people do what they do and do the best they can. But sometimes it isn't good enough. And, you know, members need to be more engaged in the process and what's happening within children's services, as they haven't been in the past. They've tended to say, well, it's up to the officers to deal with that. That should never be the case. I'm glad that Councillor Powell is engaging on a more proactive way with the families and within the directorate. And I hope that we will make some progress in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, in the report, Chairman, it says managers do not make clear in their guidance and directions to PAs when visiting should be much more frequent. This prevents PAs supporting young people, etc. It worries me when managers are not making themselves clear, because we've raised this before, that supervision is absolutely vital in a department like this. So could you comment on that? And also could you comment, please, on are we making progress in better work from our partners, so that, you know, things improved on both sides? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more group leaders? Councillor Chowns.
Thanks, Leader. This is indeed a really very disappointing report. It is very critical, and I think all of us, you know, I believe all of us in this room, you know, are united in wanting improvement in children's services to happen ASAP, in not wanting it to be a political football or anything like that. You know, we are all united in our determination to help improve things. And in that context, it is really disappointing to see this report, because we've all been putting in a great deal of effort, a great deal of money, and we all hoped to see that recognised. The only thing to do when you get criticism is to take it on the chin and to, you know, to act on it. And I was glad to hear in the presentation yesterday that immediate action was taken on all of the issues that were immediately flagged in the report as needing action. I would like to join you in saying thank you to Darryl Freeman for his, you know, 2.5 years, I think it is, of very hard work serving the council and the children and families of Herefordshire. And I think it's a very difficult job to do, to make that improvement happen. It is clear, though, from this report, we do need to do something different. I suppose from my perspective and the perspective of the Green Group, we continue to, you know, support the council as a whole in working in a united way, united and non-political way, to improve children's services, to make the most of the support that's available externally, the support and the challenge. And I hope that this report and the opportunity for change that we now have will take us on the next step of that journey to improvement. I do believe a lot of positive change has happened. Clearly, we need to do more.
Thank you very much for those comments. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, it is a really disappointing report to receive. It doesn't seem to matter which direction Ofsted come at us from in slicing and dicing their view of how we're doing. The message seems to have been the same. It's a really difficult thing to do, but I think, you know, we have to move forward on this on an incredibly broad front. And that's tough. That's tough for officers, it's tough for our partners, it's tough for you as a cabinet to work collectively on this, and it's tough for all members to fulfil a meaningful role as corporate parents in supporting you in doing that. But we've got to do it. The pace of change has not been great enough. We've put the money in. People have put the thought and the time and the effort in, but it's just not translating into, you know, change on the ground. So we need to do something different. And by the sounds of things, something different is about to be done, which we appreciate and welcome. And although this hasn't gone to Children's Scrutiny Committee, in my role as Vice Chair on Scrutiny for Children's, I'm sure every member of the committee would join me in saying we will provide the support and challenge that scrutiny has the responsibility to bring to this as an issue and continue to support Cabinet in trying to make progress here, along with our officers, our staff, our partners, and with the many families and children that are involved in receiving our services.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harvey, and thank you to all group leaders for your comments and support, and for giving that commitment and for highlighting the fact that all councillors really want these matters to be addressed and the progress to be made with children's services. So I thank you for those comments. Councillor Powell, Councillor Matthews raised a specific issue. I wondered if you could tell the Cabinet your thinking in response to that.
Yes, I will. Thank you. And a couple of additional points, given that the points that were raised. So, obviously, the focus of this is about the fourth monitoring visit and those areas of focus that were in that. So I think it is important to reflect, picking up on the point that Councillor Chowns made, that this was the focus on one part of the service, and during the four monitoring visits, that Ofsted have reported on areas of progress in some areas. So to apply that balance. We have a public practice standard in terms of what we expect of our staff. Councillor Matthews' point about management, we are very clear that we expect compliance with that public practice standard, and we are focused on making sure that it is enforced and reinforced. In terms of contribution by partners, we had some detailed discussion about that yesterday in both of the presentations and the discussions that followed. Health. So Working Together 2023 is the statutory guidance that was published in December 23, and in that it identifies the joint and equal responsibility of the local authority, health, and the police service to work together to safeguard and protect children. So that is the statutory guidance document, and it is very clear. It uses the expression joint and equitable, and therefore the appropriate mechanism for holding those conversations and making sure that those partners are sharing that joint and equal responsibility is via Herefordshire's Children's Safeguarding Partnership. I was at a regional event for children's scrutineers and business managers and directors of children's services in the West Midlands earlier this week, where I met with Deborah McMillan, who is the new local government improvement advisor for Herefordshire, and Kevin Crompton, who is the scrutineer of Herefordshire Children's Safeguarding Partnership. And we had quite a long discussion about the vehicle for making those improvements in a more timely fashion. And both Kevin and Deborah have agreed to meet with me the week after next to start to progress that. And one thing that I think is important to reinforce is that in the first visit, Ofsted raised a number of really significant concerns with us. During the period of time that they've come back on the monitoring visit, they have not found any cases where children were immediately at risk and they needed to escalate that. So I think it's important in recognising, whilst the pace has been too slow and we want to see it accelerated and we want to see more consistent practice, I think it is important to say that we've not had any immediately at risk children elevated with us since that very first monitoring visit.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powell. And your recommendation to us was that Cabinet receive and note the feedback from Ofsted. So I take it you'll propose that. I will second that. Cabinet, all in favour? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 10, which is the objectives for the new Herefordshire Local Transport Plan. The report seeks the approval of the objectives that will form part of the development of the new local transport plan and assist in the identification of the measures and initiatives in the implementation plan. In addition, attention is brought to a revised timeline for the production of and adoption of the local transport plan following revised guidance from the Department of Transport. This item begins on page 3 of the first supplementary pack. And I would now like to hand over to Councillor Price to discuss this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Well, the local transport plan has had a bit of a rocky start to this review, mostly because the Department of Transport were introducing a new process for how these things were developed. And it's been promised for, I don't know, over a year, I think. And we've recently established from them that it is not now going to come up with a new process. We have to follow the lines from the old local transport plan, which is where we're at today. But so interestingly, those of you that follow the plans of Herefordshire are probably a little bit brain dead on the plans, because we have all sorts of plans that are working together. So in this instance, the local plan, which is the planning core strategy review, was launched on Monday, and alongside it the local transport plan as well, because they happen to lead to each other and link to each other in many ways. So if you look at the key considerations, you'll see that they're, it's opportune at the present moment, because the ambitions such as the big economic plan, the joint local health and well-being strategy, and all of these others are linked into each other. So we have to do this if we want funding going forward from the Department of Transport. This is a statutory requirement, and we have to do it. And we are hoping that the LTP will be coming forward later in the summer for your consideration. So if you go to paragraph 19, which I'm just flicking up to now, I will just read to you what the objectives are in case you haven't read them. So the recommended objectives are set out below. One is supporting a thriving and prosperous economy. 2 is enabling healthy behaviours and improving well-being. Tackling climate change and protecting and enhancing the natural and built environment. Improving accessibility and inclusivity. And improving transport safety and security. That is the recommended objectives which we are agreeing to today. So I ask for Cabinet colleagues to make any comments they would have. Otherwise, this is my recommendation to accept. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. Cabinet, do you have any thoughts, queries or questions on the objectives as they're set out? Councillor Swinglehurst.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm really pleased to see Objective 3 there, and we look forward to seeing how that translates into a kind of fuller iteration of the document. I think it's really important that we have our thinking around climate change and protecting and enhancing the natural and built environment at the inception of everything. It's really interesting that these plans are starting to align as well, as you referenced. There were a number of really large plans that are coming through in a similar time frame, and that I think gives us a great deal of opportunity to make sure that they have a coherent interpretation of all these things together. So I look forward to seeing this going forward, and also noting the environmental impact paragraphs 21, 22. Again, it's keeping those things in focus is important. This is, there are many ways in which people travel, and it's important that we reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other Cabinet members? Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, you may recall that at last year's CCN conference, a number of people, speakers spoke and explained that fundamental to growth is infrastructure, and I think very much I agree with Councillor Price's points there. Number one being economic growth. That's what's going to lead to it, so I fully endorse and support your local transport plan.
Thank you. The objectives. We haven't done the plan yet. Thank you, Councillor Stoddart. Okay, right. Any other comments from Cabinet members? If not, I will go to group leaders. No takers? No. Councillor Chowns?
Thank you, Leader. I'm just a bit thrown by the fact that you couldn't see the hand like this. Thank you for this. I've got a few points to make. Just on the question of the objectives and the order that you put them in. The first one is there. The first one that you've got there is about supporting a thriving and prosperous economy. Now, absolutely, I support a thriving and prosperous economy, And I think it's really important that we recognise that there are lots of really important things that transport does that are not about the economy. The economy exists to serve people, not the other way round. So people like to travel, need to travel, for example, to visit and care for family members, or to, you know, go to school or whatever, you know, these things that aren't kind of conventionally part of the economy. And so I think it's a little bit of a shame, really, that the emphasis on the local transport plan is, in my view, you know, not focused enough on people and a bit too focused on abstractions. When the committee that I chair, the Connected Communities Scrutiny Committee, looked at this back on the 8th of November, and we made recommendations about what the objectives of the local transport plan should be. And it included supporting a thriving, prosperous economy. But we started by talking about things like road safety and health and well-being, and increasing people's choice of how to get around, and accessibility. And I think that these are really the principles that should be absolutely at the heart of setting our objectives for the local transport plan. So altogether, I do worry, really, that the 5 objectives that you've set out here are both A, you know, too vague, and B, you know, really focused a bit too much on abstraction and signalling, rather than really focused on what people actually need from a local transport plan, which is, in my view, increased choice of how to get around in a very safe manner, you know, tackling the issues that we know we have already from the transport system, such as improving road safety, reducing road deaths, such as the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So there are 2 specifics, I think, in these objectives that aren't emphasised enough. One is road safety. There's a bit of a mention of improving safety in the last thing, but we do know that road safety is a key concern for people in Herefordshire across the whole county, and specifically reducing road deaths and road accidents. So it's a shame, I think, that that isn't highlighted more as a specific objective to reduce road deaths. And I do think we need much stronger language in the objectives regarding recognising and responding to the reality of climate change. The language in here is a bit wishy-washy about tackling climate change. Actually, we need to be very clear what we have to do. We have to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the transport sector in line with our local commitment to be a zero carbon nature-rich county and our legally binding national commitments to net zero. And without recognising that in here, I worry that our local transport plan actually won't be compatible with national policy, which seems to be a bit more clear and focused on this matter. While we're discussing the LTP objectives, and thank you for including as an appendix the recommendations of the Connected Community Scrutiny Committee, it's nice to have a written response on that something like 5 months after we had the meeting. I do think it's very disappointing that our recommendations for engagement as soon as possible, which we made in November, for recommending engagement with stakeholders, were pretty much kicked into the long grass and have been wrapped in with general public consultation on the local plan. We were saying as a committee that it's really important developing these strategies, these plans, to engage with key local stakeholders. There are local groups that are just itching to, have their input. I talked to somebody on the doorstep just the other day around, accessible transport and the voices of people with disabilities into transport policy. So I think we need to challenge ourselves constantly as a council to make sure that we are actively reaching out and listening to people about what they need from our strategy documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chance. I hope you didn't get wet on the doorstep. Councillor Harvey?
Yes, thank you, Leader. On behalf of Independents for Herefordshire, I think we've sort of read paragraph 19 and the recommended objectives as not being in any particular priority order, and I think that was reinforced and assurance given at the political group consultations that were held on this document. You've got to put them in some kind of an order to stick them in a document, but we're sort of seeing it very much more in a sort of a Venn diagram sense. That said, thinking of it as a Venn diagram with sort of overlapping circles, the thing at the middle, which for us is not really coming across, is, and I think Councillor Chowns was alluding to it, is something about sustainable communities, and that there are aspects of each one of these objectives which contributes to delivering a sustainable community, whether that community is a suburb of the city itself, a market town, a village, you know, a rural locality. And it's all going to be slightly different. But I think if we have some articulation of an ambition to create sustainable community here in Herefordshire, and then look through the local transport plan as a lens on that and how transport can contribute to delivering that, for us it makes a bit more sense. And hopefully, whether you live, you know, in the Golden Valley, or whether you live in Leominster, or whether you live in on Whitecross Road in the city, that you'll be able to have a think about what sustainable community means for you in responding to the consultation that's live at the moment in terms of thinking about priorities. But you know, I think we need maybe to be getting that community idea across, because for each of our residents that means something slightly different, but we need to be able to capture it in the way we think about the local transport plan and the transport strategy for the county as a whole.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harvey. Any other group leaders? Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, very briefly, Chairman. I note the objectives below. Why I note that is because I'll be referring to them when I make my quite long speech on the next subject. Thank you.
How long is that speech, Councillor Matthews?
Over.
Sorry?
Well,
I would hope you'd be briefer than that, Councillor Matthews. Otherwise, we'll have a break in a minute.
Well, there we are. We've got 2 pages left. It won't take long.
Okay. Councillor James?
I'm sorry.
Councillor James.
Yeah, I mean, excellent in parts, I think is the words I'd use for it. But, you know, like all strategies, it's in the delivery that matters ultimately.
Thank you. Okay, right, okay. Thank you, Councillor Gandy. Right, so, okay, everyone, okay. So, Councillor Price, some comments there about road safety and sustainable communities.
Well, thank you, Leader, and thank you for the comments from all group leaders. You know, we're having a meeting so far today that is, you know, we're all enjoying agreement. So you just listen to what I say. Councillor Chowns, the order of objectives are not in any particular order, but Councillor Harvey next door to you addresses it, answered the question for me, in that the objectives, depending on which side of bed you get out in the morning, is which do you do first. And the criticism I have of this process is that government keeps saying that they are going to give us the guidelines of how we're to do this, and then choose at a late time not to change it. So the
Councillor Chowns, please, can you
don't think that would make any difference whatsoever at this moment in time, because the process needs a lot of people to get to these things. But so try not to take any notice of the order of the objectives. So there's an interesting point about how we get around. You know, It is down to where you live, how you live, who you are, what age you are, what jobs you got, whether you're retired, whether you live in the middle of nowhere. You mentioned the Golden Valley. You mentioned you live in Ledbury, you live in Ledbury, Leominster, Bromyard, all of the market towns, or in Hereford. We will all have a different view of how we get around, and we cannot possibly, in a county of the size of Herefordshire, deliver on every aspect for every need, for every person. So hopefully that when we build this up and we get to a point of consultation toward the end of this exercise, we will be in a place that we've addressed as much as we can to as many people as possible. With regards to CO2, etc., and reducing it, I point you to carbon.org, who just recently came up and said the CO2 levels in the world at the present moment are less than in Victorian times. I don't know whether that's any more accurate than anybody else's statement, because I don't know. But when I hear people saying that there is that possibility, I just question whether anything that's said on this subject is actually accurate or not. So, whether or not this is being kicked into the long grass, well, it is being kicked into the long grass for a period of time, but it is now going to be delivered and will be delivered this summer. A few other points. The sustainable communities ambition, well, we will build on that as we go, and it's down to the input from people who are asked to consult on it, what their views are for their communities, because the communities are changing and they have different ambitions. We cannot satisfy every need. I would point out that when it comes to the objectives, I think it was mentioned in a PGC last week or the week before, the similarity of this with the bypass. Well, the bypass is a specific project which has its own objectives, and they will be different from those in the LTP. And it's also mentioned right at the end that it's excellent in parts. Well, we haven't finished it yet, so let's hope we can have it excellent in all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price, for those comments and that feedback. Okay, so we have a recommendation which is to note the report and accept the objectives. That's proposed by Councillor Price. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Stoddard. Okay, all those cabinet members in favour? Excellent. Right, okay. Thank you for that, and thank you for those contributions. We're now going to have a break, and we'll be back at past. Thank you. Short break. If we can now make sure we've all got our seatbelts on and proceed accordingly. And can I now ask for the live stream? Thank you very much. So we've just had a quick break, and now, after concluding agenda item 10, we are now going to agenda item 11, which is the new road strategy for Hereford. So the report seeks Cabinet's agreement to the revised priorities within the Hereford Transport Strategy and to agree to draw down investment in new road infrastructure to improve network resilience and support the growth and development of Herefordshire in accordance with the local transport plan and the core strategy policy frameworks. This item begins on page 133 of the agenda pack, and I would invite Councillor Price to make his comments about this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Traffic congestion has been a problem in Hereford for many years. It causes journey unreliability and has negative impacts on the local economy, the environment in the city and on people's health. The problem is not only recognised by this council but by Midlands Connect, the sub-regional transport body, National Highways, who are responsible for the A49. The official diversion route in the event of a closure of the Greyfriars Bridge is 38 miles long, creating real issues with network resilience far wider than the city itself. The Herefordshire Economic Plan states that the county has the lowest levels of productivity of any county in England. Average wages are 16% below the national average. Congestion causes increased costs for businesses and discourages investment, while also creating difficulties for residents to access training, work, leisure and other services. The draft local plan has identified a need for thousands of new homes in the city and additional employment land to help support a growing economy. But highway capacity limits are restricting the full development of key sites. Traffic congestion on the A49 splits the city in two. Road link is an essential part of a transport package that will include active travel measures to set the foundations for a bright future for Hereford. Any new road needs to support Cabinet's objectives to deliver economic benefits, improve network resilience, detrunk the existing A49, deliver traffic benefits, support city centre improvements, support the draft local plan. The strategic outline business case for the Eastern River Crossing and Link Road was received last year, and the scheme undoubtedly has its merits. However, the Hereford Western bypass remains council policy, and the report shows that the bypass is more effective than the Eastern River Crossing in addressing these objectives. It is the only scheme to provide a viable option to allow detrunking of the A49 through the city. The decision of the last administration to cancel the South Wye Relief Road and Western Bypass was partly predicated on a premise that an eastern crossing would achieve similar benefits at a much lower cost. Having reviewed the resulting strategic outline business case options and costs for the ERIC proposal, it was considered necessary to compare how any new road scheme could meet the objectives as laid out. Our officers and consultants have reviewed the options in order to allow for apples to apples or like-for-like comparisons and assess the schemes accordingly. We are currently in design and delivery stage for a number of grant-funded active travel measures throughout the city. These measures will help to provide greater choice in how to travel, but they will not improve the capacity and resilience of the road network that is clearly needed. Similar projects coming forward, especially those linking parts of the city, will benefit significantly from the traffic reductions from the A49 through the city being detrunked. This detrunking cannot be achieved in any other way than a western bypass. There are many concerns about the congestion within the city. It is obvious to those who live in the rural hinterland that motorists are avoiding the city and using any rural road to try and get to their destinations, causing many problems on roads that can't support that traffic. In talks with all interested parties, connectivity is a word often used. This covers not just people going about their lives locally, whether that is for work, leisure or business within the city or the market towns and countryside, but the wider aspect of our neighbouring authority areas, including Wales, West Midlands, Gloucestershire, Shropshire and beyond. We must now look to build a new road and a second river crossing that is fit to meet the objectives set out. The key recommendation is therefore to prioritise the delivery of the Hereford Western Bypass. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price, for that.
I do just have another paragraph that just slipped off the bottom of my page.
Oh, right.
The report identifies both capital and revenue funding to progress both phases of the Hereford Western Bypass. Recently, in addition, the Council has been notified of its allocation of over £100 million of local transport funding over a 7-year period, and we are now engaged with the Department of Transport on how to progress the scheme. I have no hesitation in proposing the recommendations as laid out in the report. Thank you. Got to the end now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price, for that additional comment as well, which clarifies the matter about the extra funding that the government has provided. Cabinet members, right, okay, I've got Councillor Biggs first and then Councillor Gandhi.
Thank you, Leader. Businesses tell us the two biggest issues they encounter in the county are road congestion and the lack of labour, which is significantly impacted by the lack of affordable homes. The lack of suitable infrastructure is a major barrier to attracting inward investment when we're competing with other locations. We're losing higher value jobs as a result of that. I'm fully behind Councillor Price.
Thank you very much, Councillor Biggs. Councillor Gandhi.
We have at present approximately 150 families in temporary accommodation and many other young people living with parents as they're unable to obtain affordable housing in the rural areas and going forward also in Leinster. Can you confirm what the percentage of affordable housing could be achievable on the potential housing land which would be opened up by the building of the bypass?
Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you. The local plan that is sort of coming along, as we've discussed earlier in this meeting, actually says it all in that the viability of building development strategic sites is down to just how much affordable homes we can get out of the developers when they build their houses. In Hereford, I believe the target is 35% thereabouts in Hereford. In the market towns, it's much, much less. So if we need affordable homes, we do need to have the strategic housing sites so that we can deliver them. So to answer your question directly, I think in Hereford we can get up to 35% affordable homes.
Thank you, Councillor Price, and thank you for that question, Councillor Gandhi. Councillor Bramer.
Yes. Can you tell me, there's a lot of reference to detrunking of the A49 in the report. It implies Herefordshire Council will take charge of the current A49 through the city once there is a bypass. What assurance will we gain from the Department of Transport and the National Highways as to ongoing maintenance and funding of this road, and particularly the bridge, should the council add the road to its network?
Thank you, Councillor Bramer, for that question. It's all in the negotiation with our funding partners. The whole of this development, or the majority of this development, will be external funding. And as part of it, the question will arise about the detrunking and the responsibility of the road that is detrunked. To be able to give the space and requirement to the city for other modal shift benefits, we need that space. So the negotiations will be just what will come to us as a funding package and what state of will the roads be in when it is handed to us. I think you were a councillor at the time, but the A465 was a trunk road, the Abergavenny Road, and that was detrunked, and we got a package from the Department of Transport at that time for the ongoing maintenance. We would expect that the funding would include a sum of money to allow us to take on that road. We will then obviously have to look at extra funding to do what we need to do to that road. So whether it is
bus lanes or whatever the project will be at the time, we have to have that space to be able to do that. And I suspect that as an asset it will come into your portfolio. So I can see where you're asking a question. Thank you.
Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. As I mentioned earlier, that at the CCN last year, it was made very clear that infrastructure and housing are critical to growth, and I think that this project is fundamental to delivering that for Hereford and Herefordshire. The increased economic benefits we can see through that are reducing the productivity, we are reducing costs to local businesses that the congestion and delays cost and bring. We can establish a much better environment for local inward investment. How can we bring businesses to Hereford and Herefordshire when our city is crowded with gridlock? And more importantly, we can improve access to training, as we've seen earlier with the Wye Valley Trust and so on and so forth. So it's very important. I think this is vital to the future economic growth of this wonderful county. I'd also like to bring members' attention to the comment by Councillor Andrews at the PGC the other week, that she stated in her long and distinguished career here as a councillor, this is the 4th time that she's actually heard of a bypass coming through, and every one of them has gone to the west. Therefore, I think the road to nowhere, which is what the east is actually showing the importance of going to the west. So I fully endorse this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart. Councillor Hercombe.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to take a moment to thank Jeff Pickford, Mark Averill and Councillor Price for their hard work on this report. It's clear that a huge amount of work has gone into this, and it's clear that they've looked at a lot of data to come up with the suggestions with regards to the Eastern Link and the Western Bypass. I'm sure other schemes will be advanced by councillors across Herefordshire Council, but would the Cabinet member agree with me that Herefordshire Council must be in control of its own destiny when it comes to strategic infrastructure and advance its own schemes that prioritise local requirements, and not simply wait for other agencies to come up with schemes such as dualling the A49 between Hereford and Ross, which is not currently planned, and if it happens, won't happen until decades down the line. We need to take the opportunities we have now and put our own proposals forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hercombe. Councillor Price.
I absolutely take on board what you said, Councillor Hercombe. I don't know how long ago it was, but when we first started talking this, I would have expected at that time that this bypass would have been a dualled road looking to the future. However, the A49 is not a dualled road. There is only very small parts of it that are dualled, and it is built to, I think, what they call WS2+1 standard, which is similar to the road that goes from the A49 roundabout at the Callow to into the Rotherham estate. So it'll be a similar structure to that, with dual lanes leading to the roundabouts. So yes, we do have to take charge of this, and this is an opportunity that has been plaguing this county for a long time, and we have to move forward. We just have to, I'm afraid. You know, there is no argument not to move forward on this, I'm afraid. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that there's a frustration here because we've been here before. You know, when we've considered the road options, as Councillor Stoddart has said in the past, it's been very clear as to what the strategic value was in going west and establishing the Southern Link Road. So it's always good to have pause for reflection and to review matters. But are you surprised that the officer report has come back with the same conclusions that you were originally faced with implementing last time?
Well, no, I'm not surprised, because I believed it was correct the first time round. I was very disappointed and not to be able to have something to say when the meeting was to cancel this road. However, bearing in mind that we have a completely different set of officers working on this project, none of whom were involved in the previous iteration. All of those are now not with us in this council, and yet they have come, and this time we have looked exceptionally hard at comparing what we know with two projects that we have information on.
which before we were just looking at the SLR and the Western Bypass. This time we have a strategic outline business case that says go this direction, and we have the original plans to go the other direction. So we've compared as much as we can like for like, and the scoring mechanism that's been employed by our professional officers comes out in favour of the Western Bypass by a significant margin. And there are certain aspects of it that just cannot be dismissed as we can't do this. It is absolutely clear that the Eric crossing, as procured for a strategic outline business case, cannot in any way, shape or form allow the detrunking of the A49, which gives the city centre the space that is required for future active travel and future development for how we get around. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. That's a key critical point to make about the detrunking. Okay, any more Cabinet members at this stage? Oh, sorry, Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you. Yeah, it just seems to me that do nothing isn't an option, and I think we you know, there's broad agreement there needs to be a second river crossing, because otherwise we have a huge problem with resilience of the local road network. Several years ago, I was at a conference and had a discussion with a company that specialises in active travel solutions to congestion, and I described Hereford to them as a medieval walled city that sits a little bit like a bullseye on a dartboard with roads converging on it from all sides. A city of 53,000 residents thereabouts. The employment and service centre of a county, bisected by a river in one direction and bisected by a trunk road in the other direction. And what would they suggest? And they thought for a bit and they said, you know what, there needs to be a bypass. Because actually, it's fairly obvious that that's what's required. So the question is, where does the bypass need to go? If we rely on a single crossing, it makes the city and the county vulnerable to anything, whether it's a structural problem with the bridge or somebody breaking down. You know, any day-to-day problem can cause gridlock, and that is ridiculous for a modern city. So the question then is, east or west? And to quote the village people, I think we should go west, because it's the only option that does what needs to be done. It's the only option that allows the detrunking of the A49, and it is this that is the key to successfully delivering active travel measures to creating road space on what is currently the A49. And that will reunite our city, and I think that's really important as well. And I think it's important to consider, what do we want to see going past medieval city walls? So we want to encourage behaviour change, and in order to do that, we need to create the road space for that to happen. It's the only way we're going to get a true bypass and not funnel traffic up a network of rural roads, which doesn't really address the problem. And, you know, there's always a lot made of the relationship between the road and housing, but we need to deliver housing. We need affordable housing. We need housing for people to live in. And where is the more sensible place for this housing to go, other than proximal to the city, which is the service centre, the employment centre, and the beating heart of the county? So I therefore support these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Swinglehurst. Any more comments? I don't know if Councillor Price, you wanted to come back?
If when you leave this room you go through that door, on the wall behind there is a map, which struck me one day when we were having coffee out there, that in times when Hereford was just this is where we're going to sell some stock on the side of the River Wye, and it's grown. It became the market town with every road leading to the centre that we know it today. And if you look at that map, it just actually is the spokes of the wheel going out on every A road that goes out from it. But along the top of it, and I say the top of it because that's the way it's on that wall, there is a road that goes dead straight across the top of it to the north, and it's called the Roman Road. Guess who built it? You know, it sort of stands up for itself. And they took a look at it 1,000 years ago and said, well, this road, we've got to build a road here because it's not correct. Nothing's been done since, and we have got a problem. The problem is seismic, in that I think every single person in this room will agree that we need a second river crossing. It's we have to go where the evidence sends us. So that's what this report is about. It is about a second river crossing married into the network that allows for the connectivity that we're all looking for.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. And just to note, Romans were very good at building bridges as well. It's a pity they didn't while they were at it. Okay, right. Okay then. So I'm now going to go to group leaders, if any group leader wants to speak. I'm not sure that... oh, right. Okay. So Councillor Matthews put his hand up first, and then Councillor Chowns next.
You've done a first-class job, Councillor Price, of tutoring all yours and make sure they're singing from the same hymn sheet. That's been noted, and good luck to you anyway. But let's make a few things clear and put things as they really are. First of all, the true independents have always been in favour of a bypass. And every Hereford council for the past 30 years, together with local businesses, have always supported the eastern route apart from your group. So you know, that's one thing that we want to get clear, that's the case. Oh,
Your sound wasn't being picked up.
Oh, right. A report by the Department of Transport forecasts that by 2027, traffic on all access roads into our towns and cities will be travelling more slowly than cyclists, and urged ministers and local authorities to come up with a much bolder proposals to help deal with the potentially disastrous situation. Our present Conservative administration here in Hereford continue to tell us that a Western Relief Road is the answer to our problems. Qualified engineers who attended numerous public meetings in the past to discuss the proposed new road to the west have repeatedly stated that it would greatly increase the congestion of the city centre access roads because of the extensive development being proposed throughout the county, which would generate up to 30,000 extra vehicles within the next 10 years. It goes without saying that the Conservative proposals will further aggravate the congestion and do very little to enhance the much-needed growth of our local economy. This clearly indicates that their current proposals are flawed. Most of the daily traffic movements are to the east of the city, hospitals, colleges, railway station, etc. Traffic would still use these routes into the city centre regardless of what other options you put up. Highways improvements only are clearly not the answer, and there needs to be far more joined-up thinking. We should be working with our MPs to get the local rail network modernised and public transport generally sustained, reducing the ongoing threat of crippling congestion. And can I make sure that I waive that and bring it to your attention? 11 years ago, I got that approved with the Welsh Government and Network Rail for the bypass to be for the big pump of the railway station out at, I forget the name, at Hughes Harold, where are we, to be in, and it was all approved, and also with a route into Rotherham for goods to go in and out. All that was approved. Conservative administration chucked it out. I have attended a number of meetings with businessmen and the enterprise zone. It's always been the case that over 2/3 of them have always supported an eastern route, but most importantly, a greatly improved, regardless what's been said about A49 from Rotherham to the M50 and Ross-on-Wye. We have to produce 17,000 new dwellings within our county by 2031, which obviously result in substantial increase in the local population, and they will all require the provision of employment and other supporting services. We already have a high number of talented young people in need of suitable employment at present. We should all, therefore, fully support our businessmen in their efforts to get the enterprise zone at Rotherham Industrial Estate generally fully operational, and the only way we will achieve this is by having a new road constructed as suggested with improvements to the A49, regardless what people say. That's what they want at an eastern bypass. We cannot, however, expect these businesses who are already providing a sterling service for us in these extraordinarily difficult and challenging times to go on delivering opportunities and prosperity unless we provide them with the necessary infrastructure and support them in what they want. my proposals, and these are a little bit outlandish, so don't fall off your chairs, I ask that we seriously consider a new market town, total new market town, south of the county, with more joined-up thinking. This is the trouble. There's no joined-up thinking. There's no long-term planning. It's all when we want to start stepping outside the box. And the modernisation of Ross Cottage Hospital, if possible, to be financed by the developers to save traffic flow daily from the south of the county into our congested city centre and ease the pressure on the Hereford A&E and produce more services locally. That's where we should produce the health and employment services where the people live. Locally, to reduce the traffic flow within the county. That's what our local transport plan states. And by doing what you're doing, you're cutting right across that. In our local transport plan, it states it should be recognised that measures to address medium and long-term distances will be by far have the greatest overall impact on reducing transport carbon emissions in the county. 50% of emissions are attributed to journeys between 10 and 50 miles. 50 miles. So that would stay, if they were there and staying there and working there, cut that out. We cannot go on with sprawling development on the fringes of our beautiful city. We therefore urgently require a far more sustainable planning policy put in place. There is also the problem of obtaining planning permission for the Western Bypass. High water tables, flood zones could cause two of the city's largest businesses huge problems because they have boreholes along the route, which is the source of their water supply. Reporting to build thousands of houses in the catchment of a flood zone, hunting and conservation area, with sprawling development proposed to the west, with adjoining rural parishes, it would ruin the approach to the city considerably, destroying its overall attractiveness and a general appeal to visitors. We clearly do not have any sustainable planning policies in place. Then there is the killer punch, a bypass through the centre of many thousands of houses. Carbon emissions, light and noise pollution, yet this administration call this progress, totally contradicting everything they have said in the local transport in respect of this issue. I've always said that we should look at the Bridge Solace to Belmont Road. If we did that, an eastern bypass, we'd have a river crossing both sides of the city, and with the A49, which the businesses want, regardless of what you say, and then we go on. They will not in any way drive up the A49 70 or 80 miles to Manchester before they hit the motorway. They can be on the motorway at Ross within a quarter of an hour, and that's time for them, and time is money. So I respectfully suggest that you look what I say and before you go any further with these proposals, because what you're saying is put in a bypass through the middle of 18,000 houses. What about the pollution? What about the noise? Everything. You're going totally against what you're saying you're trying to achieve. If it was way out, I wouldn't say anything, but to be putting it through an estate and then also a sprawling city. What sort of planning policy is that? Just to be pushing the city further and further out instead of making more use of the rural county which we are. And as I say, look at a new town elsewhere that will take the bulk of the housing and the employment and supply the services to support that, like improving the health services to the south of the county. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Who's next? Sorry. Councillor Chance.
Thank you, Leader. So I'll start in the spirit of, finding common ground with a couple of areas of agreement with my Conservative colleagues. I agree that congestion is an issue in Hereford at certain particular times. And I agree that doing nothing isn't an option. But, this paper hasn't considered all the options. It's considered only two. It's, in my view, completely blinkered and kind of stuck in the past, rerunning old debates rather than actually thinking constructively about what we really need to do to tackle the real problems that we have. We have been here many times, and yes, I am spending a lot of time knocking on doors all over North Herefordshire at the moment, speaking to lots of people about this issue, and people say to me, we have been talking about a bypass for literally decades. People don't believe it'll ever happen, and they have a real appetite for us to be doing the things that we could be doing now to tackle congestion. And they also recognise that, you know, talking about a bypass that will cost £300 million without any idea of where the money's going to come from, you know, we're potentially years and years and years more discussion. It is a distraction from what we really should be doing. We actually have a really good opportunity now just at the moment, because government has magically found £100 million down the back of the HS2 sofa and said, oh, we can give you some funding for transport. Sorry, we didn't give it to you for the last 14 years when you really needed it, but now this money is on offer over the next 7 years. So what we should be doing is thinking about how we can use that funding to invest in the far quicker and cheaper projects that would actually tackle the congestion. I drove into Hereford to Plough Lane yesterday about 8:30 in the morning. Absolutely smooth flowing traffic. Absolutely no issue. Why? Because it's the school holidays. It's the school run that's absolutely key to the congestion problems here. How about giving kids free school transport in Herefordshire? It's something that we used to do. Why don't we do that? That would really help get loads of vehicles off the roads at the key congestion times. Just imagine if we used a tiny fraction of the cost of a bypass to do something like that. It would really tackle congestion. You know, the proposals in this paper represent really very, very poor value for money. So we're talking about a proposal to spend £300 million or thereabouts on building a bypass, which it is claimed would bring about significant reductions in journey times in the city. That's exactly your wording, Councillor Price. But your own proposal, the paper shows that the most significant journey time reduction is just 2 to 4 minutes. Now, for anybody who's spent half an hour or more stuck in traffic in Hereford, they'll realise that this is not going to, you know, it's not going to make a dent in that. The congestion problem is not going to be solved by a bypass. We know that only 7% of the traffic that currently comes into Hereford is trying to get through to the other side. Most of it is trying to get around inside the city, trying to get from one part of the city to another part of the city. A bypass will not solve that, and your own papers show that. £300 million for 2 to 4 minutes faster journeys. I mean, it just doesn't add up. There'll be knock-on effects. You've talked about building houses, so that'll increase the traffic on the roads coming into the city, particularly on the west. Again, that is acknowledged in your own paper that talks about it. Some of those roads are really narrow. They're already clogged. Those are some of the worst congestion problems we have in the city. But you're proposing to build 1,000 more houses, each of which will have 2 cars, trying to drive in from the west into the east of the city or the centre of the city, trying to get to the colleges, the hospitals and so forth. Have these impacts even been taken into account in the modelling? That is not made clear in the papers. Building a bypass won't improve productivity. I mean, it'll help people avoid Hereford altogether. It'll help them get from north to south and south to north and completely avoid the city. Might help, I recognise it might help some businesses with some of their traffic movements, but fundamentally, it'll also attract lots of traffic off the motorway network. So the traffic that currently goes down the M6 and the M5, trying to get from North Wales down to South Wales and vice versa, that'll all come onto the A49. What impact is that going to have on all of those other communities along the A49, which you've just acknowledged is a single-track highway, a single carriage highway? And Councillor Hercombe has just acknowledged it's decades away from any proposal to actually dual that. So we would create serious knock-on problems by creating a bypass in Hereford. The paper itself makes all sorts of claims, and in fact your answers, Councillor Price, to some of the questions that were asked by the public earlier on, you were talking about the benefits of improved complementary measures. I've got some text here. You said, I fully recognise that building new road capacity can lead to induced demand and additional traffic, and a package of complementary measures will be included to encourage more walking, cycling and use of public transport. There's no information about those measures here. There's no inclusion of the costs of those measures in the costs of these proposals here. You've included costs for the walking and cycling measures in the Eastern Bridge when you're comparing that, but not in the Western Bypass, because clearly nobody's actually thought about what that would involve. That will drive up the cost still further, of course. And in fact, we should be doing those walking and cycling and public transport measures instead. They are vital to improving gridlock, and as with the school buses, you know, there's an obvious example that we could be doing right now. More issues. Paragraph 84 doesn't have any information on the actual carbon impacts of this proposal. They are really major, both the embodied carbon impacts and the operational carbon impacts of building this this proposed bypass. They were assessed in 2020 as very significant. Why are we not, at the very least, taking forward information from reports that we've already done on key issues that are legally binding on us to reduce our carbon emissions? Why are we not taking that information forward and giving it the, you know, the attention that it really deserves in this? And, you know, taking that forward, we've got a summary table, paragraph 87, where you're comparing the western and the eastern route. But, you know, given the council's restated commitment to the climate and ecological emergency, given the fact that Department for Transport guidance requires environmental appraisal of reasonable alternatives, why on earth is no reference made to environmental performance for the route options in that table? How on earth can Cabinet make a decision without that information? You're required to do it by DFT guidance. Why isn't it included in these papers? And while we're on this issue, I will bring up again a point that I made 2 weeks ago in the councillor consultation on this. Paragraph 87, that table comparing the western and eastern options, compares them in relation to a set of objectives that basically come out of nowhere. We have just discussed, you have just agreed local transport plan objectives, but the objectives in this next paper for this really important decision worth £300 million are not the same as the ones that you've just agreed. Why on earth are you not joining up your thinking? How on earth is it that in the same cabinet meeting you first agree local transport plan objectives and then you propose to agree a document that is not based on those objectives? It doesn't make any sense at all, and it suggests that insufficient thought has really been given to this. You know, what we should be doing, the question we should be asking is, given that we have now been promised £100 million over the next 7 years, fantastic, for transport investment, how can we best spend this money to achieve the objectives of the local transport plan, the ones that you have just agreed? At the very least, any proposals have to look at the options in relation to those objectives. And we need to not just compare one road option with another road option, but think, using all the evidence that's already been developed, about what would be the best value for money. It clearly makes no sense to spend £300 million on a bypass that, if it ever happens, would take at least 15 years, possibly more. A bypass that will destroy nature, make it much harder for us to meet our climate commitments, will only reduce congestion by a tiny amount, 2 to 4 minutes maximum, most significant journey time savings. That makes no sense. We have another obvious choice. At a fraction of the cost, we could use that money to invest in things that will improve congestion right now by tackling the core of the problem. Why is this cabinet unable to see this and so blinkered that it's insisting on going round and round in circles yet again with an unjustifiable proposal that is not even itself internally consistent with your own strategic objectives for transport?
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Chowns. Councillor Harvey, would you like to comment? Sorry, there's been a delay.
No, that's fine. Waiting my turn. I agree with much that Councillor Chowns has just said. Personally, my background is strategic planning on 40-year timescales for the MOD. You know, the team that I used to lead fed advice into MOD's Global Strategic Trends document, which itself informs the UK National Risk Register. I'm a strategic planner, but, you know, in doing that strategic planning, I've kind of lived in a view of the future, which is looking 40, 50 years ahead, and the kind of threats and challenges that we've got coming at us with fuel poverty, with climate change, with you know, sort of global access to fresh water, becoming increasingly difficult with desertification, with the kind of civil strife and social problems that will come out of that. I've kind of got a very different perspective on this to most people. It is really difficult to do strategic planning because you've got to have the time and the energy and the ability to step right back from things and be able to have the information that tells you about the way the future's going to look with a degree of confidence that allows you to make informed decisions about what you do now, and to make those decisions in a way which balances out the risk and probability of various different things happening. Now, you know, the public questions that we've heard associated with this agenda item flag some of the many serious concerns which exist regarding the substance of this decision. And Independents for Herefordshire share the enthusiasm of our residents to improve the travel experience in the city and more widely across and throughout the county. We continue to encourage this minority cabinet and our council officers to strive to make decisions based on high quality evidence of sufficient detail to enable decisions to be sound, fair, balanced and reasonable. We recognise the work that's gone into preparing for this decision, but are disappointed that the traffic modelling has not considered the impact of the Eastern River crossing in combination with the Southern Link Road. We believe that this would have been worthwhile in demonstrating that this eastern route will deliver even greater improvement to the city's traffic troubles, in addition to this option being cheaper, quicker and easier to deliver than the western route, whilst having the important added benefit of impacting primarily on the travel experience of people who live and work in and around the city, unlike the western route, which aims mostly to improve the transit of vehicles wishing to avoid Hereford altogether. We're concerned that the city master plan is not being used as a core document to inform the all options which are under consideration, and that was always its intention when it was commissioned, but it seems to have been punted off to one side and is being ignored until all these important decisions have already been made and wrapped up without the nuisance of actually having to refer to that master plan, which had really wide public consultation in terms of its development. It's worrying that this decision effectively pre-commits this council to spending, in reality, probably more than £500 million when all the bills come in, without first considering whether this is the best use of such funds for the whole county and all of its communities, as Councillor Chowns has already argued.
Is that it?
Sorry, at a time when this council is pressed for funding and needs to make the very best use of its cash resources, Independents for Herefordshire are not convinced that the information presented here demonstrates that the recommendation to spend cash actively pursuing the western route is actually justified. With a general election, a maximum of only a few months away, we suggest that it's not likely that funding for the bigger project is likely to be realised, and we would support continued pursuit of a more modest second city bridge project as a realistic and deliverable prospect for the council and the county, hopefully with outside funding support, but one which we could deliver within our own means if that proves necessary.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope I'll be briefer than some contributions here. Councillor Matthews mentioned about the fact about the Eastern Route being backed by parties for the last 30 years.
Right.
Well, 25 years ago, the Hereford Times had the front page which said "Go West" in bold headlines, which is when I proposed it first, "Go West." So that's factually incorrect. I can understand why Councillor Matthews, he represents an area that the bypass probably would cross over, and he has to do these sort of things. We hear about strategic planning. Well, one person's, as if it's a sort of gospel. Strategic planning is, you know, the current Prime Minister's strategic planning would be rather different to Liz Truss's strategic planning. They both come up with different results as far as that's concerned, and different paths. What I do know is that, you know, we had an election in May last year, and the Conservatives were in a bit of trouble nationally. But I think Hereford Conservatives were one of only 2 councils that made reasonable gains in the council elections. Now that must tell you something, that they've adopted a Lib Dem policy that is popular. I don't know, that may be the case. But the public are sick to death of the prevarication that's going on over this particular issue. They want it, get it done. It's overwhelming, especially in Hereford. It is in my ward, where, you know, substantial heavy transport is there, because, you know, on the western side of Hereford is where the large transport is coming from. You've got Bulmers, you've got the poultry factory. You've got, and the biggest of all is coming from my part of the world, Tarmac, which have an enormous amount of vehicles. I met 10 quarry lorries within about half a mile when coming from here. And that's the sort of level at which we have the heavy transport on the west, and that is major, and they're not moving within the city. They're going all over the country. It's also a very large employer. My late friend, dear friend, who helped me first get elected, David Nobbs, the writer, Rise and Fall of Reginald Perrin, etc., he said, actually wrote me a letter not long before he died, and he moved to Herefordshire about 50 years ago, I think, and he was lamenting what was happening to Herefordshire, and he said, the problem is that there are too many people who come here to die in the status quo. And, you know, much of the objections come from well-to-do people living in prosperous situations in large houses. Herefordshire needs to be a working place where young people can make a living and prosper. And they want a vibrant economy. And we're not going to have it if we carry on like this. We've got each of the market towns. Ross has got a bypass. Ledbury's got a bypass. Bromyard has got a bypass. Leominster's got a bypass. And the Greens in Leominster are actually campaigning for a link road in Leominster. Kington's got a bypass, which the whole community campaigned for. Why is it Hereford hasn't got a bypass? Why? What is there about Hereford, the largest city, the most congested, largest conurbation in Herefordshire, that is denied? It's overwhelming, the support that exists for a bypass in Hereford. People are sick to death of people trying to stop it happen by various means. The Greens actually saying, well, you know, suggesting they might be happy with one on the east. They were campaigning 25 years ago, over 25 years ago. The former councillor, Felicity Norman, was leading a protest across the Lug Meadows against there being a bypass on the east. So, you know, they're against the principle of the bypass, and that's honourable, that's acceptable. But don't confuse the issue by suggesting, well, you might be in favour if it was on the east, but not on the west, when you propose the west. What the public are saying, and saying quite clearly, and said last May, is, for goodness sake, get on with it.
Thank you, Councillor James. Quickly, please, quickly.
First of all, Councillor James talked about the tarmac lorries. If we had a bridge solid...
No, sorry. It's not a debate. I thought you were coming back on a key point that
All
Councillor
right.
James
So,
made.
all right then.
But
So-
just, but this is not a tennis match, please.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that there's a bridge solid road, tarmac wouldn't even come in, they'd go over there. But also, I'm sick and tired of hearing people saying, it doesn't affect me, so I don't care. That's the sort of attitude that's been adopted, like, you know, and I don't think any of you good folks are affected by this at all. So anything goes. You couldn't get too very good. Thank you.
Okay, you've made your point, Councillor Matthews. Okay. Now, I have allowed Councillor Hitchener to speak on this item, so if we can go to Councillor Hitchener, and then we'll go back to the Cabinet, please. Thank you very much, Councillor Hitchener.
Thank you, Leader. What I'm going to say is probably rather parochial compared with the larger issues which has been discussed. I make no apology for that because I do represent Stony Street Ward, where part of this road will go through. So whilst I continue to consider that the Eastern Crossing is a better option, I will restrict my comments largely to issues affecting my ward. My comments are chiefly on 2 points. First, issues around the roundabout to the west, and second, the effect on traffic in my ward. The assumption in the paper is that the Western Bypass will be built, an assumption confirmed by wording such as in paragraph 60, which refers to phases 1 and 2 being interdependent. This contrasts with the situation when the planning permission was sought for the SRR in 2015. I was told by the consultants at the time that they were told to disregard the next part of the bypass, and I have various pieces of correspondence which confirm that the whole idea was not to go further west. This is why the roundabout at Cleehonga Turn only has 4 arms, with no arm that will link to the Western Bypass. And if you care to look at your papers, this is shown at the plan at paragraph 50. If the roundabout is constructed on this basis, it will need to be redesigned when the western part is built. It would not be a simple matter of putting another arm into the roundabout. I believe it will require a much bigger roundabout and possibly a complete rebuild. I read with interest ACON's analysis of the currently planned roundabout, which in Appendix A, paragraph 6.1, states that the current plans depart already from the required standards in 2 respects. It seems to me that the design of a roundabout, particularly with the bend required on the Cleehonga link, is not easy and may need to be changed anyway. Cabinet have a choice. Go ahead with the roundabout as planned, knowing it is not fit for purpose, with the associated criticism when it has to be dug up not longer after it is built, the associated additional costs, and all the inconvenience to local residents of the second build, or alternatively, have the roundabout redesigned now to include a 5th arm, or perhaps more radically, designed without the Cleehonga Link Road. At the very least, I'd expect the Cabinet to commission ACOM to design a 5-arm roundabout and inform the Cabinet about how much of a cost saving there would be in building the right thing first time. So my first question is, will the Cabinet agree the roundabout needs to be looked at again? And will they commission ACOM to do the design work? A precedent has been set with a roundabout on the A49, which was built with 4 arms when only 3 were required at that time. My second question relates to the effect on traffic. I note that Cleehonga, Kingstone and Allensmore will see an increase, according to clause 69, for Cleehonga and Allensmore of over 80%. Madley will see a reduction of 31%. Could the residents, please, of Allensmore and Cleehonga have an explanation of these figures? The only explanation I can think of is that the traffic on the Bridge Solace Road will stop using that road and will alternatively use the bypass. But there is no evidence of this in the papers. Could both communities be provided with an assessment of the effect of these increases on them, with an indication of what can be done to reduce negative effects? The B4349 is already dangerous for cyclists. A near doubling of traffic is going to make this worse. No regard seems to be taken in this report to the negative effect on these communities. I also seek some clarification on these figures. I think I'm right in saying that these figures are based on the whole of the bypass being completed. What, please, is the effect if only the SRR is being completed. Could I please see a table showing that evidence? I also note in the figures that it refers to the Belmont Road and the time saving. This is a really important issue for those people in my ward who travel into Hereford. I must confess I don't recognise the figures. It seems to suggest that peak morning times, the travelling time, is 5 minutes and 20 seconds from the roundabout towards the end of the Belmont Road. I think, first of all, I think the data should be from the Ruckhall Road, which will add probably another 5 minutes onto that time. And anybody, including Councillor Price, I'm sure, who travels down that road will just not recognise that figure. 5 minutes and 20 seconds at peak times to travel into the Asda roundabout. And the cost and the saving, apparently, by spending these millions of pounds, the saving to people who are travelling down that road is 59 seconds. It's just extraordinary when we're trying, this is part of the purpose of this is supposed to be reducing traffic congestion. It saves 59 seconds. And another element of this is, of course, traffic on the Abergavenny Road, which is prevented from big heavy lorries cannot use that road because of the bridge at Pontrilas. This brings me onto the subject of road safety. I have expressed concern for many years that providing a bypass will have the effect of increasing traffic on the A49, passing through villages such as Peterstow, Harewood End and Much Birch. Hereford, becoming a city with a bypass, will attract traffic heading for Shrewsbury, which would previously have travelled along the M50, M5 and M54, saving 34 miles of travel and following the building of the bypass potentially being quicker. This induced traffic will pass through small villages ill-equipped to take the increase of traffic. This has been poo-pooed. What evidence has been gathered to support or discount this? There is none in the report. The report for Council, Cabinet, is very Hereford-based. The traffic information is all about Hereford. There is reference to the project increasing road safety in Hereford. This is all very well for Hereford, but what about the wider picture? For Clehonger and Allensmore, and especially for Dinmore Hill, road safety is likely to be made worse. What extra traffic will use the A49 following any detrunking? I think this is information that residents outside Hereford should be provided with. So 3 questions. First, the Clehonger turn roundabout. Second, the effect on increased traffic, which is in the data. And third, about the effect on travel that is impacted by this project outside of this report and for which no data is being provided. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hitchener. So thank you to all group leaders for their contributions. Really important that we hear the views of your groups, so thank you for that. And to Councillor Hitchener for your points. So the recommendation before us is to agree the way forward, and all of the points that have been raised by group leaders and by Councillor Hitchener, when we're in a position to make the decision about which strategic route we should explore, then we will be in a position to address all of the issues that have been raised by the group leaders and Councillor Hitchener. But this is a real strategic decision at this stage, given the report that's before us and given the objectives that we have. There will be all kinds of ramifications for making decisions like this, but we at first need to make the direction of travel decision, pardon the pun, and this is what is before us. Councillor Price, I just wanted to ask one particular question. The Eastern Link has its merits, and that's acknowledged by the report, but it's being referred to as a bypass, and it's quite clearly that cannot be the case, can it? Because it cannot, unlike the Western route, the Eastern route cannot work its way round to the A49. What's your view on that, please?
Well, interestingly, we had a meeting last week about 20-mile-an-hour zones and where they can be implemented and where they shouldn't be. And we had a discussion particularly around the colleges on Folly Lane and the fact that the Whitton Way residents, which is to the north of the A438 coming up from the Cock of Tupsley, traffic using it as a rat run. And if the Eastern River Crossing has proposed in the strategic outline business case was to happen, that would make that worse. So there is two options for those people that want to bypass Hereford to the east. They go further out through Bartestree and Lugwardine and then use the rat runs to get on the Worcester Road or continue on the Ledbury Road. So coming back into the city centre, for anybody that wants to use it as a bypass, it just actually adds to chaos on the eastern side. The eastern route does provide for a lot of additional facility to get around, and it does take traffic from one place to another. The impact is, as it stands, would be just as serious on the eastern side as the current central area is. But I want to reference one thing. I have lived in Herefordshire all my life, and to the west of Hereford, and I have just watched traffic build and build and build, and every single parish in my ward has had to put up with heavy vehicles using the rat runs, which are absolutely not suitable for a car, never mind heavy lorries. And it's been mentioned about tarmac and gravel lorries. They run round my ward parishes looking for any way to get further down and out to the south, because that's the only route they've got open to them. So when it comes to the resilience of where we're at, there is absolutely no way that we must have a river crossing, another river crossing. The evidence just says it's got to go west. So here's an example. Last week I was in the market actually putting money into the council's budget because I was taking sheep into market, and those people in this room who do not live in this county or live in Europe and come here wouldn't have a clue about these things. But there is a toll for every animal that goes into Hereford Cattle Market and Sheep Market that comes to this council as a result of the investment made in taking the old market out to the new site. And people are just saying to me, there are people coming from all over Wales to that market because this is where business is done. Now, you just have to realise that to be able to get business working, that cattle market site has a number of potential employment site alongside it, which needs to have infrastructure to support it. So where am I at with it? I'm exactly where I said, and I'm not shifting on it. I've heard the comments being made today, and every single comment I've heard has been relayed to our new officers in this council, to me, that please bear in mind this is an issue, this is a problem. Can we address it? How do we address it? How do we look at it? But the fundamentals of it is every which way we look at it, right up the chain to the Department of Transport and the Minister of Transport, in various conversations that we've had and Midlands Connect over the last few months, are saying, here's an opportunity for you to get a scheme together, get it to full business case, the funding package will follow. So I don't have a problem with where I'm at. I think I deserve the right as a resident of many, many years here who have experienced the problems. And when I note the options that were taken into consideration for the strategic outline business case for the ERIC scheme, I think there was 18 options considered, and the only two that were considered were the 1 and 3, which we have mentioned in this comparison. All of the others were discounted because they were not viable. The viability of any scheme has to be proven right down the line that will attract the funding. Without that funding, we won't build anything. But we have to build something, and this is what the answer is from all views going forward. I don't care whether anybody thinks it's old-fashioned. All sorts of comments have been made, but I'm saying this is from experience of being a business person in the west of Herefordshire. This is significant, and there will be a change of how traffic travel. But we're building a road for that traffic to get on that road to use it, not to absolutely block up every rural road within the county for many miles to the west of Herefordshire and the rest of the county. So I can't reiterate enough that this is a result of a lifetimes of knowledge of the area, a whole new bunch of officers sat next to me. They're not brand new to this council, but they're new to this problem, and they've looked at it and they're giving me the advice and the reassurance that the data is supported fully to go with what this is saying. We go west for a bypass for Hereford.
Thank you, Councillor Price, and you've got the last word on the matter. So I'm now going to move to the recommendation which you've proposed, and I will gladly second. All Cabinet members in favour? Okay, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for your contributions. Next item is item 12. I would like to thank everyone for their attendance, in particular members of the public. And the next meeting is scheduled for 2:30 on the 25th of April 2024. I will now formally close the meeting. All members of the public are requested to leave the building promptly. Please ensure that you have taken all of your personal possessions with you and return your visitor pass when you leave. Can I now please ask that the live stream has stopped?